A big show today as we'll talk boring late model races, history made, opportunity seekers, and a racing rule I just continue to really dislike. Let's go. It's Sunday, June 23rd. I'm Justin Fiedler. This is Dirt Tracker Daily presented by Kubota Genuine Parts. There's a whole boatload of racing to talk about today, but unfortunately, none of it involves the big money shows at Huset's. We did get that Wednesday race in last week, but the entire rest of the weekend ended up being postponed because of rain, and man, did they get some rain. Much of the facility ended up being flooded because of the creek off the backside of the property going way over its banks, and there were a number of campers that had to be rescued from the floodwaters that took over that camping area. I don't believe any injuries were reported, but a really tough deal for folks who will have to deal with flooded out vehicles and campers. Huset and the World of Outlaws are working on potential reschedule dates, and they will announce that information when it's ready. Some wild photos and videos, though, of Huset's in the situation there. The Outlaws will be back in action this coming weekend with 2 nights at Cedar Lake Speedway in Wisconsin. At Lernerville for the Firecracker 100, we had Ricky Thornton Jr. making history, becoming the first driver to ever win the event back-to-back. The battle out front last night, pretty good early on with Mike Marlar and Drake Troutman also in the mix and leading laps. But once RTJ got out front right before halfway, that was it. His margin of victory at the end was nearly 12.5 seconds, and only 8 cars were on the lead lap. There continue to be grumblings about the quality of racing we are seeing at the top of dirt late model racing right now, and some of the dominating performances in crown jewel type events this season certainly don't help that narrative. Thornton now has 11 Lucas wins on the season, and he's led every lap in 6 of those races. But I think it's important to note that this doesn't necessarily feel like a problem across all of dirt late model racing. We've seen plenty of good shows throughout this year, including with Lucas and the Outlaws and some of the other series. So is this a larger problem for this side of the sport, or are some just making a big deal out of really good teams being really good teams? I think it's hard to say. Behind RTJ, Devin Moran charged from 16th to 2nd, which included being involved in an early incident, and Marlar finished 3rd. Hat tip as well to Drake Troutman. He was 5th last night, but also won one of the prelim features on Friday. That was his first career win with Lucas, and he was obviously emotional about it, especially with losing his dad not all that long ago. Status quo in the Lucas standings with RTJ, Davenport, Moran, and Tim McCready continuing to hold down those top 4 spots. Portsmouth and Muskingum County up next in 2 weeks. With Huset's watched out, attention in the sprint car world really seemed to be split between Super Dirt Cup at Skagit and the IRA Maverick, kind of mini speed week. At Skagit, Corey Day was the big winner on Saturday night, taking down $76,500 with the win. That was $62K for the victory, plus more for leading laps. Zeb Wise ended up 2nd after leading early, and Cole Macedo was 3rd. Corey and Ronnie Day are now the first ever father-son combo to win the Dirt Cup at Skagit. And Day really felt like the show all weekend, as even though he didn't win either prelim show, he spent plenty of time railing the top side and delighting sprint car fans with his cushion banging. We've about run out of nice things to say about the young California star, but I still want to make sure you are enjoying watching him on dirt while you can. He hasn't made any more pavement starts since winning that late model feature at Hickory back in April, but there are still plenty of rumblings about his future on that side of things. I would expect more pavement stuff at some point this season, and if I was a betting man, I'd put a nice chunk of change on this being his final full-time year in a sprint car. As for Zeb Wise, he started the schedule weekend with a 12th to the win charge on Thursday and went 17th to 7th on Friday. He's currently 10th in the high limit standings, and that team has battled this season after winning the All-Star title in 2023. We'll see if this provides them a boost when the high limit season gets back going this week at Lake Ozark. Dominic Gordon, also a schedule winner, is his first 410 victory, and then plenty of carnage through the event as well. That included Dominic Selzy going for a nasty tumble on Thursday. He had to sit out the rest of the weekend. The NARC Sprint Cars are back coming up this week with a stop at Silver Dollar on Saturday. Cole Macedo holds a 5-point lead over Justin Sanders in that championship. In Indiana, the IRA Maverick Speedweek seemed to draw a bunch of opportunity seekers. Instead of racing with the Outlaws at Huset's and the tough competition there, plus the factor of the weather, a bunch of teams decided to run these races to try and steal some wins. It was 55 cars at Lincoln Park, 47 at Bloomington, and 51 last night at Hobstadt. Thursday at Lincoln Park, we got a fun battle between Ayrton Jennington and Emerson Axum, with Axum coming out on top for his first career winged 410 win. I posted this on social media, but I loved that those two raced each other hard, then got out of their cars grinning and shook hands after. Friday night at Bloomington, it was all Jacob Allen. He was one that we originally expected at Huset's, but the Shark 1A made the late call to head to Indiana, and it paid off. They grabbed a win and avoided the weather. Axum again on the podium, as was Chris Wyndham. And then last night at Hobstadt, we did have a few extra invaders. Tyler Courtney showing up after Huset's and Justin Peck making an appearance driving for Michael Dutcher and the 17 GP. All sunshine out front, he topped Axum and Carson Short at the end. The other driver who had a shifting schedule through the weekend was Brady Bacon. Originally on the Huset's entry list, he went to Putnamville and raced with Kevin Newton. And he's continued through the weekend with Newton, with USAC getting rained out in Wisconsin. The 4-night Speed Week concludes tonight at Terre Haute. We'll see if anybody else decides to show up for the finale. Jumping back to late model racing, the World of Outlaws had 3 shows with stops at Thunder Hill, Ponderosa, and Brownstown. Brandon Shepard had yet to win an Outlaw race this season, but that is now no longer true. He went back-to-back between Thunder Hill and Ponderosa, and a top 5 last night at Brownstown has him back out in front in the championship by 12 points over Nick Hoffman. Hoffman, though, still leading the series in wins now with 4. He outdueled Dustin Sorensen last night in a messy feature at Brownstown. Bobby Pierce continues to charge back up through the field. He's now 4th in the standings after an 8th and 2 podiums. Unfortunately for him, though, he's still triple digits behind Shepard and Hoffman. The Outlaws are off today, but right back to racing tomorrow at Independence Motor Speedway. One other Outlaw note for you, Chris Madden has fallen off the tour, with that team announcing late last week that Madden is dealing with, quote, unforeseen health issues. They're hoping for a swift recovery and a return to the racetrack. Madden gives up a top 5 spot in the standings, and his last race was a top 5 in the Dirt Late Model Dream at Eldora. Madden had already announced in early June that he was stepping back from full-time competition after 2024 and pulling back to a very abbreviated schedule for 2025. Obviously hoping the best for Madden here and his family. In other weekend late model racing, Jeff Smith and Zach Mitchell took the Hunt the Front Series shows at Lancaster and Cherokee. That score for Mitchell was a nice $20,000 payday. It was not a great weekend for points leader Brandon Overton. He had a DNF at Lancaster after a flat tire and suspension damage. He also had issues last night at Cherokee and finished 12th. He's still out front, though, in the standings over Sam Seawright and Ashton Winger. Hunt the Front back July 6th at Sonoya. Summer Nationals wins went to Ryan Unzicker and 2 more for Tyler Erb. We had a slide job dust-up at Spoon River between Jason Fager and Erb, and Unzicker was there to capitalize. Erb, though, bouncing back to win at Brownstown, Illinois, and Peevely last night. Erb now with 6 wins in a race. The Summer Nationals are at Lincoln Speedway today. Trevor Neville, Tyler Nicely, Cole Falloway, weekend modified Nationals winners. And then other weekend winners around the country included Steve Buckwalter in 410 action at Williams Grove. Matt Campbell won Saturday at Lincoln. Anthony Macri drove all the way from Huset's back to Port Royal. He won there on Saturday as well. Jordan Mallett won with the ASC Sprint Cars at Batesville. Weekend US MTS wins went to Tyler Wolf and Jake O'Neill at 81 Speedway. And before we close out today, Zeth Sabo, the winner last night at Fremont, that one was a controversial race at the end. Sabo and Cap Henry tangled in turns 3 and 4, coming to the checkered, with Henry ending up tipped over and Sabo going for a spin. After the red was called for Henry tipped over, they gave Sabo the lead back for the restart, and he held on for 1 lap with the nose wing completely hanging off of that thing to win the race. Track officials deemed that because Sabo didn't stop moving and the caution wasn't called for him specifically, he got his spot back. That feels like some pretty significant mental gymnastics to say that Sabo wasn't really involved there. Usually cars that spin to avoid a crash get spots back, but that's not what this was. And it's not lost on some folks as well that Fremont is operated by Rich Farmer, who also owns the car that Sabo drives. There is some gray area here in the rule books, which officials obviously used, and I still don't understand why cars can be involved in incidents and get spots back like it never happened. I know scoring reverts back to previous laps, and you can't use loops like they do in NASCAR, but no way can you convince me that cars should get back to the lead. At best, Sabo should have been 4th because that's where he appeared to have blended back in. This is a rule that requires way too much of a subjective decision-making to be made, which then opens up the controversy with Farmer involved here. Definitely some folks not happy in Ohio today after that one. That's it for the daily show today. There is some scattered racing around the country, so make sure to hit up the streaming schedule today over at DIRTRACKR.com/watch tonight. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.